Hello, everyone. Welcome to another virtual event with Mysterious Galaxy. I'm Nick, the Director of Events for the store. Today, we are here with... I'm getting echo. One moment. Okay. So, Lauren, I toggled your microphone for a quick second because I think that was the feedback from the speaker and the microphone happening. So, yes, welcome, everyone, to another virtual event. I'm here with two wonderful authors, Lauren Ho and KJ Dell'Antonia. Today, we are celebrating Lauren's latest book, Lucy Yi is Not a Romantic, right there. An ambitious career woman signs up for a co-parenting website only to find a match she never expected. Lauren is a reformed legal counsel who now prefers to write for pleasure, hailing from Malaysia. She is currently based in Singapore. In conversation, we have KJ Dell'Antonia, the former editor of Motherlode and current contributor to the New York Times, as well as the author of How to Be a Happier Parent. If you have not yet... And in her boots, yes. There was a list of other ones, but I'm like, oh, I can't say everything. It'll be too crazy. But yes, and in her boots, which you can get for pre-order right now. If you click the link below, that'll take you to our event website where you can get Lucy is Not a Romantic, as well as Last Tang Standing. And you can also get KJ's books and pre-order In Her Boots. Because getting books and helping support us and helping support the authors just keeps us doing wonderful events like this. If you have any questions that you want to submit during the event, click the link below that says Ask a Question. And then halfway through the event, we'll be asking your wonderful questions. I'm going to go ahead and disappear for now and leave it to these wonderful authors to take it away. I will see everyone later.
Hey, I just felt like the conversation between us over the book, How to Be a Happier Parent, would be totally different. Like, let's don't have that conversation, right?
Sorry, guys, I'm really sorry. I think
Sorry, everyone. Maybe we'll give Lauren a chance to grab some headphones if she has some headphones.
It's going to be a headphone thing.
But in the meantime...
this book is so much fun. I've got a ton of questions for Lauren. But I don't know what to do without Lauren, other than to just say that Last Tang Standing is also a super fun read. And the great thing I think about both of these is that they are available in trade paperback, which is my favorite format for a summer read. Hardbacks are great, but I'm about to go on vacation tomorrow and I'm thinking about packing. And yeah, I have my ebooks. That's fine. But I want a real book, but I'm not going to tote a 20. I'm not going to tote a hardback. It's just too much. So that's a fun thing.
KJ, since your book In Her Boots is coming out on July 5th, do you want to do a quick pitch about what to expect with In Her Boots?
Not yet. Because we got Lauren back. So
very good.
I want to talk.
Yes,
Lauren,
I'm back.
Yay, that's perfect.
Is this better?
Way.
Okay, first and foremost, I really apologize for all this running around and getting the mic. I just landed in my mother-in-law's house and everything is still packed. So it's 3 a.m. here and I apologize. I'm normally much more organized, but
Well, you just flew across an ocean with an infant, right? So the fact that you're still standing, I think just is gold stars all around.
It's all thanks to caffeine. This is not my normal state.
So let's talk Lucy Yi. This book has one of the most interesting premises that I have ever heard. Super hooky. It's the kind of thing that when you hear it, you're like, oh yeah, I would totally read that. And I usually think this is kind of a dull question, but I've got to know on this one. Where did you get this? Where did this come from? This idea?
It's interesting because I do have a lot of friends who are not necessarily in a committed relationship and they're in their 30s and they're wondering like what's next, and some of them are from queer relationships. So they were all asking each other what's the next step for us if we want to have children. And so as I was talking to them and doing some research on my own, I came across this co-parenting platform called Modamily or Modamily. I'm not really sure how you pronounce it. And I started researching elective co-parenting, and I just thought this is such an amazing concept, and I would love to feature it in a book. And that's basically how the book came into being.
I had no idea. I mean, to the point where when I started reading it, I was like, really? Like, is that even a thing? So I had to just pop out real quick because I mean, it wasn't like I wouldn't have bought it anyway, but I just wanted to know. I had to go ahead and check. So, and your character, Lucy Yi, is, I mean, she's kind of like the exact person who would go to something like this. Like you said, she's 30 something. She's feeling like her career has taken off, but her family life has not. And did you do any poking around? Did you like join under a secret name?
I totally did join the website because that's how you do research,
how
right?
else are you gonna figure it out, right?
But I don't even think I use a fictional name. I was just like, let's join using my real name because I am. No, I'm kidding. I don't remember what name I used to join, but I'm pretty sure I used Lauren. So my husband's going to get surprised if he ever also decides to join the website.
Yeah, that's another book, definitely. A really weird
I know,
one too, because it's
like,
not even. Yeah, well, that's what was so fascinating about this is that you have these two people who are not looking for romance, right? They're looking for this very specific thing where, in fact, part of the deal, I think, is no romance, right? I mean, like that's kind of what you sign up for. You could
join the website looking for a romantic partner as well. I mean, the whole point of this platform is that everyone's there because they want to find a co-parent, and you could specify from the beginning whether you want a romantic relationship or you're looking for a romantic relationship or not. And now I feel like I'm doing a pitch for the website, and they should really hire me as a spokesperson.
They should totally hire you. Well,
yeah.
So we're not doing that. So the other thing that really has always caught my attention about both Lucy Yi and Last Tang Standing is that as much as they are books about romantic relationships developing, they're really books about family relationships, and in particular between single women in their 30s and their challenging parents of various kinds and what those parents want. What is that? What's that like to write with your own family dynamic?
So I'm pretty sure my mom is also logging in to watch this. She watches everything. She's very supportive. So I would just like to reiterate that, like, none of my books are based on my real family. It's an entirely fictional piece of work. So they're both entirely fictional pieces of work. Okay, and with this legal proviso caveat out of the way, of course, every author draws from their own lives. So I guess there must be elements of my family in there somewhere. But, you know, it's pretty like standard, like intergenerational conflict that probably happens in every culture, but maybe more heightened in mine. So that's pretty typical of my books. I do explore a lot of that, like the conflict between women of my generation and women, I mean, like the parents who are probably from a different mindset coming in and looking at things. And, you know, that's just a natural recipe for drama.
Yeah, and drama is absolutely what you get. It's not that I ever thought that you were writing from your own experience so much as I just you know, it's a little like there's definitely perspective here that the people in their 30s who maybe aren't yet ready to commit or aren't ready to have kids, on the one hand they typically by the end of the book they're ready, right? Or in this case they're ready a little sooner, but there's definitely a perspective that the parents are putting pressure on them in a way that is not cool. And I think that's more what I was interested in hearing about, whether you get when you talk to the people around you that are of that older generation, whether they also feel like that's not cool, or whether it's like they're doing it, but do they even know they're doing it?
I mean, I think, like, at least from the context of in the context of Singapore, most of the people in my parents' generation would probably not be very supportive of this alternate path to
Mother
parenthood.
or whatever.
So marriage is very important here still, and
Mm-hmm.
even though strangely enough, the divorce rate here is almost like 1 in 2 couples, right? But
Wow.
people still want their kids to get married first, and then, like, divorce later if you want, but get married first.
And in Last Tang Standing, so I mean, you're really talking about some very serious issues within these super fun books. I mean, in Last Tang Standing, you got really into the question of I don't know how to phrase it, because I'm not from Singapore or Malaysia, but the question of whether it's okay to have a relationship with someone who is not of the same I don't even nationality cultural background. Yeah,
to put it mildly. Yeah, I mean, this is something I also explore in my books, and obviously, I'm personally not supportive of this viewpoint, but it's very, very common, and I don't understand why it's still the case. And well, just like generally, for me, I like to approach serious subjects with humor, and that's just basically how I am as a writer. That's part of my DNA. I use humor to approach serious subjects or topics of conversation tangentially. So I'm glad you found my books funny. But yes, I do explore some pretty heavy themes.
They're really fun and funny, and yet you were able to spend sort of more time really deeply exploring those intercultural issues than I think. American writers are so constrained by the need to explore those issues from a particular perspective. You felt, to me, to have a little more freedom to have sympathy is not exactly the word that I'm looking for, but there wasn't the same sort of knee-jerk assumption that, oh, well, these parents are bad because they are making this, because they have made this thing. You let them express their real hesitations and their reasons for them in a way that I, as an American reader, really appreciated, because we don't get to hear that perspective very often.
I think that's a really interesting point that you brought up, KJ. I think for us, from this part of the world, we're not necessarily going to put our parents in their place, so
Right.
We're not that confrontational. We approach such conversations a little bit more like we skirt the issue a little bit, but we try to chip away at it sometimes. Me personally, I'm much more confrontational, but in general, because culturally, we're not raised to sort of oppose our elders. We have to treat them with respect because they came before us and they have had so much experience in life. I mean, we have to honor their viewpoints and we have to share ours. And sometimes we might or might not be able to meet in the middle, but that doesn't mean that we're just not going to tell them to their face, oh, that's wrong. We might do it, but it's just not the way we would do it. And in general, I think conversations about race, religion, and everything in between, it's not something we discuss easily with our parents as well. I think it's changing, but so I mean, it's just the lens that we have when we look at these issues. We just think with time and more exposure, our parents will be able to meet us in the middle. But in general, we're not going to oh, you're wrong, you're horrible, I'm never going to speak to you again. That's just not
right.
I mean, I'm oversimplifying as well,
Obviously.
Of course, but it's just not how we would approach it here.
And I think that creates some really exciting opportunities for you as an author and for us as readers to explore these issues a little differently, because if you only come at these questions of the generational differences between, what's appropriate and what's not from the perspective of one generation. And if the assumption is that one generation is right, you can't really explore it in the same way. So I feel I especially loved reading both Lucy and Last Tang, because I was just getting, it's not just a different, like, it's not just for me, oh, I'm reading something in a different culture and oh my God, I want to eat all this food, which it absolutely is, but it's also really fun and interesting to see these generational questions explored with more with a different kind of deference, because if an American character is deferring to a parent's old school views, then that is often a character who's really, who's also passive. Your characters are in no way passive, and yet they also, are more deferential than an American character would be. So it just gives it all this a whole nother
different tension.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. And that's exactly right. It's a different tension. It makes it more exciting and more interesting, because you can't make this sort of assumption about what the right thing is for somebody to do.
I mean, like, it's not, I just look at it like, as someone who's grown up in different continents and just been around people from different cultures, I never assumed that, like, my lens is the right lens. I just think that it's better to just listen and understand that people grew up with different cultural norms around them, and to give them the space to tell their stories authentically. I do understand that sometimes, like, being published internationally in English and having the burden of representing my culture, which is already so little represented in mainstream media, at least in terms of, like, the English speaking mainstream media that you're familiar with, KJ, and in much of the Commonwealth, I guess. It's already a very heavy burden of representation, and, like, a lot of times some readers are like, your books are great, but I just find it strange that you don't challenge this, to your parents' face. I mean, not me, but, like, the characters.
Right.
And it's just not the way we would do it. And it doesn't mean that we're not challenging it in our own way. We're just working at it at a different speed and, like, more obliquely, like, we're not going to go directly to the person's face and go like, oh no, this is wrong. This is complete madness. You're not supposed to say stuff like that. We're just going to do it with, like, dim sum, and maybe, like, but maybe you might want to consider that, in a very, like, deferential but oblique way of getting just, our message across.
Or just accepting different points of view, right? And going, well, okay, you're going to do that, and I'm going to do this other thing, and we'll just never talk about it, or
never talk about it. That is also very common here.
It's not
I do
really
have a lot of friends whose lives
either,
were just like so hidden from their parents, that, like, if their parents really knew them, like really knew them, they'll be shocked. So there is also that disconnect, I think, between the generations. There are people who, like, hide themselves, their true selves, completely from their parents, and that's also really sad. But I think most of us are in the happy middle, where we're just, like, trying to change the way our parents approach things, but, in a very deferential manner. And that is the extreme, where, like, the families are totally communicating really well, and, like, everyone's, like, coming at each other, but they're all friends at the end of the evening. There's, of course, a spectrum here. I'm not saying that my writings are, like, representative of everything, of everyone. I never claim to be. And also, I think, like, in Singapore and Malaysia, at least, these are multicultural societies where we have our different ways and the different problems dealing with racial discrimination, and it's just dealt with very differently. But it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, or it doesn't mean that it's dealt with, like, correctly. It's just very different from the way maybe America or the UK deals with its own historical baggage with race, So, I mean, but without getting into, like, such a heavy conversation.
No, I didn't mean to. I love that this, sort of sits so perfectly on the shelf with the sort of the American rom-com and the British rom-com, and I love to contrast the different ways that different authors approach them. And I wish we had more Singaporean and Malaysian authors who I'm afraid would have to be write in English, because that's the only language that I can successfully read novels in. And we're a long way from reading them in Singapore.
Or translations. I think like it's really, we live in a very interesting time, because we're having all these great authors like writing in their own languages and being translated, and it's really exciting times. So
I just hope, I hope they translate
as a reader,
stuff
I'm
like
spoiled.
this.
I'm really spoiled. So
they should translate more things like this, though, because translations are often just like, this is the very big serious book about our culture. Here we have translated it. And you're like, I don't want to read a very big serious book. Could I please read like the translated version of, Last Tang Standing, only that, somebody else had written. So, well, let's talk about Lucy Yee. How much fun was it for you as a former corporate attorney, right? Like, yeah. So as
legal
a former
counsel, but yes,
legal counsel, but still, like, you had the big, box checking job that the parents want you to have. And here's Lucy, and she has this job, and it is everything to her, and yet it's not everything to her. How much fun was it to sort of write that arc for her?
Well, because maybe I grew up wanting certain things that, like, maybe I myself am reliving my dreams since I've left corporate culture, right? The corporate working environment. I don't know. I'm living vicariously through Lucy and my characters, I guess, because they're really, really successful in really traditional dream jobs, at least traditional here. But I don't miss working in a corporate environment so much. Right now I'm a professional aid worker. And that's very different. I work in a totally different sector, humanitarian. I work in the humanitarian sector, and it's very different. And I'm really glad that I made the switch, because it's also given me a healthier work-life balance, and I'm able to write more as a result. So I'm actually having a day job, but I'm also able to write at night. So it's a good transition for me, at least.
Wow.
But
Okay.
to go back to your question.
Okay. Sorry.
I mean, there are just so many aspects of Lucy and Andrea Tang that I really enjoy exploring, but their jobs are maybe not that important, but there are interesting settings to which to highlight the characters' many dysfunctional qualities, maybe.
I was just thinking about the ways that I think both characters put a lot of weight on job success, and then eventually evolve to finding, to feeling like other things are more important. I thought that was probably pretty fun to explore as someone who's moved into finding other things important.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
So wait, 2 little kids, full-time job, and books. Super excited. I'm super impressed. And I think probably a lot of people would love to hear how do you structure your days so that everything happens in a way that works for you?
So I get up in the morning, and my husband and I put the older kid in school, in preschool, and then we go to work. Our younger son is taken care of by someone else, and we're really lucky to have help. And I work a full day. I come home and I hang with the kids and put them to bed with my husband, and after that I write. I usually write for maybe 2 hours a night. I haven't done so for a couple of months. I've been going through this whole writer's block, but also it's a really difficult time for people in the humanitarian aid space. So because there's the Ukraine-Russia conflict as well, and various other horrible things going on in the world. But without getting into that, it's just a matter of, I guess, having boundaries and saying, I'm not going to be logged on to my work emails all the time. And also, it's not easy. And I must say that, as I said, it's been difficult to write the past 2 months. But in general, usually that's my schedule. And on the weekends, I don't write. So, yeah.
That's great. So it sounds like you're probably neglecting your Netflix, and that's okay.
Oh, I
do-
never neglect Netflix, like ever. I'm watching Stranger Things now, season 4. Very good.
I'm sure there will be a big pylon of other people who are watching Stranger Things season 4. There's definitely I could pull a few out of my house right now. So do you think more? I hate to ask it when you're telling me that you're having like writer's blocky moments. Do you think more things along the lines of Last Tang Standing and Lucy Yee, or are you thinking maybe moving into something different? I don't know.
Oh,
What excites you
really
now
good
about
question.
writing?
So I've always wanted to write this like psychological thriller that I've been playing with, but I mean, I need to be in the right headspace, and the murdery headspace. No, I'm just kidding.
Maybe the Ukraine conflict could get you in the murdery headspace.
No, that's just totally different. That's like the I'm angry at the world headspace, and that's not good for writing.
No.
I have sold 2 YA books, and I'm supposed to be writing them, but I'm not. And they're supposed to be like Last Time Standing, but for like YA. So if you're excited about that, then I mean the first book is like 50% done. If my agent happens to come across this podcast,
it's practically finished.
No, I'm kidding. She's awesome. My agent's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean my editor.
Right.
But yes, 50% done. It's going to happen. I don't know how, but it's going to happen. So I'm really excited about that. I love YA. I just love everything that's happening in this space right now. There's just so much diverse representation and interesting stories being put front stage. So I'm really happy to be part of the space.
So are Lucy Yee and Last Tang Standing, if I walked into a Singapore bookstore, would I find them on the English bookshelves, or where would I find them?
I mean, it depends, because like in Singapore and Malaysia, there are like tons of English bookstores, right? And like large ones as well. We have like Kinokuniya, we have Times bookstores. These are like really big like chain bookstores, and they sell everything. So because Malaysia and Singapore used to be like ex-British colonies. Well, I mean, Malaysia used to be, and so there's a large majority of the population speaks very good English, I guess, and read a lot of English material. So there are like tons of English bookstores, and they would be grouped the way they would be grouped anywhere else, I guess. But maybe there would be a specific shelf for like Malaysian literature or Singaporean literature in English. That's the difference. Right. But Last Time Standing, by virtue of the fact that it's published by an international publisher, would not necessarily be grouped in, like in Singapore at least, it wouldn't be grouped in Singlet necessarily, even though it is actually.
Why did you decide to go that route?
It wasn't naturally something I actively thought about it. I mean, there are not many options in publishing locally anyway. And I just thought, like, if I'm going to get published and I'm going to put all this work in, then let's try to go and do it in the traditional Big Five. So that's actually how I approached it. But of course, there are local presses that publish in English, but the opportunities are also perhaps less more limited. So it was just a matter of like, if I have a good story and I think this could sell, let's try to do it and pitch it to a Big Five.
Great. Well, I don't know. Should we see if we have any audience questions? I can see that people have like stuck their hand. Like, it's kind of funny. It says ask a question, and then there's just here we go. Unanswered questions. It pops right up. That's glorious. Okay. So, do you ever get pushback from your family or friends regarding your books?
That's a really good question. And most of the time, I don't think I've ever encountered real pushback. My friends, at least, are my friends for a reason, and they understand that fiction is fiction. Plus, I tell everyone this is not inspired by you, so don't take anything you read personally. Yeah. Unless I literally said that it's inspired by you, then take it personally if you want. But most of my friends are really chill about stuff, and they understand that like the whole point of fiction is to examine like issues and hold it up to light. And you as a reader, you're supposed to like read it and form your own opinions and decide why the fiction makes you uncomfortable, or why the piece of fiction that you read elicits such emotions, and sort of like try to parse why that's the case. I mean, that's the whole point of fiction. And it's I find that sometimes the discourse that happens is like, oh, why is this person talking like this on the book? I don't agree with it, so I'm going to punish the book by giving it a bad review. And it's weird because sometimes that's the point of that character. It's that character is there to sort of like hold to like certain maybe not so kosher opinions that like people in a particular community might have, and you're supposed to like examine why this makes you feel uncomfortable, and that's a good thing, and that's the whole point of fiction, basically. I think
if you can only make that person like sort of universally bad because they have some view that many people disagree with, then how are we going to explore like where that point of view might come from, or how, I don't know, how to just be in a relationship with someone who doesn't agree with you about everything. I know exactly what you mean.
Healthy.
Agreed.
Discussion is healthy, and like not. I don't mean like Twitter discourse. Like that's dumpster fire.
Twitter discourse is not healthy.
It's not real discourse.
I feel like we can just say that. Like there aren't many just flat out facts you can throw out there, but I feel like Twitter discourse is not healthy. It's definitely one of them.
Oh yeah, completely. I think if you really wanted to have a real conversation with someone, you should meet them face to face, or at least like in a setting like this, and you should hash it out in real time, right? It shouldn't be on like your phone when you're angry. Maybe you're on the toilet or you're doing something stupid at the same time, and like someone else is yelling, "Mommy, give me my dinner," and like, I'm so angry, or this person. That's not healthy. So
no, and I mean the urge to just bust out the texting even in your personal relationships is just it's not good. Exactly. Okay, agreed. This is not good discourse. So totally different question, but I love it. How often are you concerned with American readers, or presumably British readers, not understanding cultural references or societal cues in your books?
Oh, I love this question because it's something I discuss with my author friends from this part of the world as well, especially when they're published internationally. Presumably. Yeah, I find that there's like a pervasive, like Americanized or British lens through which everything is viewed in the English-speaking media, at least, and everything else is considered marginalized, right? And fair enough, because that's the culture in which I'm published, right? But I do think that like it's important to sort of understand that if someone doesn't come from your culture, how they examine issues might be just completely different, and you're never maybe going to see completely eye to eye. But that doesn't mean that their perspective or their viewpoints are wrong. And I think it's a matter of education as well, like to understand that there's not just one way of looking at things, and the only way we get educated in general, no matter where we're from, is to read widely, right? And like, we're not just one monolith, wherever we are from. Like even within America, for example, you have people from red states and blue states. I don't know, but you know what I mean, right? It just depends on where you're from and what you grew up with, and that shapes you as a person. But in order to sort of not get stuck in these little echo chambers, you need to break silos. Oh my gosh, I sound like a development aid worker, which I kind of am. But you need to break these silos and meet other people halfway and like explore new things, yada yada yada. And you do that through fiction. And you do that through, I don't know, listening to music from other cultures and just broadening your mind, opening your mind, and just broadening your perspectives. Oh my gosh, I sound like
when it comes to stuff like the more surface things like music or some store that would be super common to and an easily recognizable reference for someone who's familiar with Singapore but isn't known to an American or a British audience. How do you make the choices around which things to offer that sort of little subtle explanation for, her earrings, which are things you wear in your ears, or whatever. Where do you draw that? How do you make those calls?
That's a good question as well. For me, because I I write in English. That's my first language, and I grew up speaking that in my family as well. I have grown up in many different places, and so like I have a very different way of approaching things. But what am I trying to say? It is 3:30 a.m. Sorry, guys. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, like, I don't consciously make these choices. I just like write about them as I see them. I don't necessarily think I'm trying to pander to anyone or highlight certain things like, ooh, for like, look at this cultural curio or whatever. It's not for exotic effect. Right. I just basically write about things as I see them and as I encounter them. There's nothing deliberate about the choices that I make in terms of like what I hold to light. It's just basically, this is what it is, and this is.
Do you get like
what I see?
Right. Do you get like a copy editor saying something like, "Well, I'm worried that American readers won't understand what a such and such is." So, how do you decide when to go ahead and explain it?
So for Last Tang Standing, there was, I would say, an editorial push for me to use a glossary. Footnotes. I use footnotes, right? And I wasn't against that idea because in my original manuscript, I think I had a couple of footnotes as well. But it was more like, hey, I want to make a joke out of this. But it wasn't like, oh, here's the cultural context. Let me explain. It wasn't necessarily that case. Yeah, what was I saying? Yes. So basically, going back to the copy editor thing, I have such a good example. For Lucy. So in Lucy, I talk about confinement nannies, and there was a comment from my copy editor saying like, do you maybe mean night nanny, because confinement nanny sounds like you're being held against your will. And I was like, no, this is actually the term. Confinement nanny is actually like what in Chinese culture they call it, like the one full moon, like I don't even know how to translate it, but basically it's this very experienced sort of like hybrid between like a night nanny and like a person who makes all these traditional food that's supposed to nourish you and stuff. And I don't even know what to call them because they do everything and they take care of the baby and the mother just rests. So this is a very specific, culturally specific term, confinement nanny. And my copy editor was very concerned. She was like, right. Or he was, or they were basically very concerned and saying like, but is this correct? Maybe you want to change this. It's like, no, we can't change it because night nanny is absolutely not the same thing.
Different.
It's completely different. Confinement nanny has to be translated as confinement nanny. And if anyone has an issue, they will Google it and they will see that this is totally okay. No one is being held against their will. Back in the day, maybe by their mothers, but confinement nannies are basically harmless. They're very nice. We love them here. And they're awesomely
paid. Sounds wonderful.
So.
Did you have one?
I did have a confinement nanny, but that's because I'm based in Singapore and I don't have my mom with me.
Right. I think I would like
so the confinement nanny basically is supposed to take traditional role that like a mom would like play back in the day. But I guess like most like modern moms don't even know how to make all these like confinement foods for the new moms these days. So like a confinement nanny is basically a professional that will take care of you and like feed you and let you rest.
Man, yeah, I love my mom, but I could see that a professional might be able to step in and really just ramp up that soup making and maybe like offering me compliments on my personal appearance and my mothering skills. I feel like a professional could probably step up the game. there. I like it.
Yeah, that's basically what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to encourage you, and like there's no complex dynamic between the mom. I mean, like a confinement nanny and their client. They're just there to help and advise, and basically that's their job, right? So there's no like weird element of like the mother-daughter conflict, whatever.
Right.
And basically it's very common here, and this is just one of the examples of the cultural specificities. Excuse me, I have a cold as well. That basically it's really hard to explain to someone who's not from the culture, but I'm really glad that in general my editors and my copy editors are really cool, and they accept it. Like I know what I'm doing, and no one is being held against their will.
That is your next book. That's the thriller.
Yes, that's then for the next book.
We'll talk confinement.
Might or might not write.
Different stuff. So I love this question. Let's as we say, like midway through our podcast, let's get into what we've been reading. And specifically, someone wants to know if you have any local writers that you would recommend that we could maybe read in translation or that write in English.
Okay,
and I'm sorry, but DJ reads books. I'm assuming that you do not speak Malaysian.
Well, as I said, like a lot of people here speak and write in English. So exactly. I'm just going to name a few of at least from the Singaporean context, I'm going to give a few names that some of you might be familiar with, such as Bali, Kaur Jaswal. I hope I'm saying her name right. But she's excellent. She's a Reese book club pick as well. That's why her name might be familiar. There's also a couple of other authors I really like Daryl Cole. He writes English middle grade books. I'm just thinking right now, who have I read recently that I really like? In Malaysia, of course, my favorite author is Hannah Alkaf. She writes middle grade and young adult, and she writes like fantastic books. So I recommend anyone who's looking for really interesting young adult / middle grade books to sort of look at Hannah Alkaf. So HANNAALKAF. She's great. Who else do I know that's published in English? When I was much younger, there's a Malaysian author called Tash Au that basically still continues to write in English today, and he's got like excellent books if you're looking for a more historical or contemporary fiction written in English. He's really good as well.
Cool. Someone wants to know.
Oh, and Yang Zichu, of course. Oh. Sorry.
That's okay. Someone wants to know if there will be a sequel to Last Tang Standing.
Okay, so this is a very good question. The sequel exists kind of like 50%, but I first have to like sell it. I think like sequels are, I mean, you might know as well, KJ, sequels are hard to sell.
Yeah, my agent was like, I don't know, let's prove you can write something else. It's like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that too. I don't know. I might one day just release it on like Substack or something, chapter by chapter. I don't know. Cool. But it's something I'm like not really focused on right now. But yeah, you can read my YAs. They will be very funny.
Somebody else wanted to know how a story like Last Tang Standing or Lucy Yi is not a romantic. How will you change that for a YA audience?
You can't really. I think like YA audiences are concerned with like they're at a totally different life stage, right? So their concerns are very different from the concerns of a 30-something-year-old woman.
So how will you approach that as somebody who's used to writing for 30-year-olds? How are you going to shift your own mindset?
Oh, okay. I don't know. Apparently, when I was like putting my books up for acquisition, and not me, my agent, a lot of people said like, "Wow, you write like you really understand a 16-year-old." And I thought, is that a compliment? Maybe it's a compliment. I don't know. But I basically love my characters that I'm writing about right now, and I find it very easy to be writing in the voice of a 16-year-old.
Nice.
This is concerning.
No, this is great. We love it. So I guess
I just.
last question is just what are you reading? What are you reading now?
Oh, I wrote a really fabulous. I mean, I'm selling. I'm self-praise is no praise, Lauren. But there is a list that exists on. I think it's available now. Oh, yes, it is available now. So, the Nerd Daily published my chaotic vibes only beach read list, and it's like got all my
Chaotic vibes
recent
only. Oh,
or
I
not
love
so
this.
recent books, and that I enjoyed, and I think would be perfect for this season of not doing much, at least in the northern hemisphere. I guess I don't know. We
Yeah.
in the tropics we're like beach read. It's like summer all the time.
We don't need
But
no
you know,
beach reads.
if you're looking for book recommendations, you can check out my article published by the Nerd Daily. It's
The
like
Nerd Daily. Okay.
yeah, it's pretty comprehensive, and I think you will find some real gems on it.
I love
But
that.
but I could drop two reads that I really enjoyed recently. So I read Emily Itami's. I hope I'm saying her name right as well. She's Japanese, I believe. Fault Lines by Emily Itami, and the second book I really enjoyed recently was Girl A by Abigail Dean. Sorry, knows. Yeah, that was a really good book.
I really enjoyed Lucy Yee is Not a Romantic. And let me
Thank
just
you.
say that, yeah, I loved it, Lauren. And everybody, buy it for yourself, buy it for your best friend, buy one for your sister. Absolutely buy it from our friends here at Mysterious Galaxy Bookstore because it's so important to support the
local
bookstores that do these events, right? Because you're just not going to hear
100%.
from authors if we don't have bookstores to share our voices. So thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so much
you
for
so
having
much.
me as well. Thank you, KJ. I'm so looking forward to your new book as well. I
Thank you.
love the Chicken Sisters. It was so funny, and I loved it. It was just perfect. You write like with such a tender and warm voice. I love it. So
Thank
I'm
you.
very
I love it
excited
when
to
people
read.
compare us, so which does happen.
Yes, and everyone can either purchase books through Mysterious Galaxy or pre-order. If you want to purchase Lucy is Not a Romantic or pre-order In Her Boots, you can definitely do that by going to the link below. It goes to our website, or you can even come into the store and do that locally here, right now. Well, not right now. We're going to be closing soon, but yes. But again, thank you so much, Lauren. I am so thankful you could be here at almost 4 a.m. your time. This has been such a lovely event that we really appreciate it. And thank you so much, KJ, for being here and
Thank
being
you.
a wonderful moderator. All right,
Yes,
everyone.
thank you so much. I always enjoy talking with KJ. She's great.
All right, everyone. I will hopefully see you all for the next virtual event. And I wish you all a good night or good morning, depending where you're at. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, guys. Bye.